Welcome to Muskegon Rising, a community service project of the Muskegon Rotary Club. Our purpose is to create lasting positive change. We've been doing that here since 1916. So, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. DJ Hilson, back again on this side of the table at this microphone. And it's my honor and privilege and pleasure today to be interviewing Todd Jacobs, who is the president of the Muskegon Community Foundation. Welcome, Todd.
Thank you very much, DJ.
As I tell all my guests, I promise not to cross-examine you. But if for some reason I get into that mode, it has nothing to do with you.
That sounds great. Can I bring in a character witness?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll let you call whoever you want.
Very good.
Well, welcome. It's great to have you. I think we were just having a mini discussion here before we got sort of live. And the Community Foundation is sort of a bedrock, I think in general, but certainly for Muskegon County. But before we get into the nuts and bolts of that, why don't you talk about you? Let's talk about you.
Sure.
How about that? So if you could, give us a little bit about who you are, your background,
Sure.
before we get to how you got here.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, and it all sort of ties back. I grew up here in Muskegon County and have found myself in West Michigan my entire life and career. I've been in the nonprofit sector for over 30 years, half of which has been in the community foundation world. And so just have been very blessed. Spent some time working at Hackley Hospital, raising money for it was the new emergency center back in the day. I've worked within the United Way system out of Grand Rapids and also worked down in Howland Hospital and at Ferris State University. But a very broad breadth of experiences within the nonprofit sector, but I've really enjoyed my time within the community foundation world.
So what is it about the nonprofit? I mean, what drew you to that sort of line of work? I'm always curious about, what kind of drives people into that.
Sure. Growing up here in Muskegon, I went to St. Francis de Sales School and then Muskegon Catholic Central.
Go Crusaders.
Yeah, go Crusaders. And my parents really built the whole idea of volunteerism into what we do and is a part of our life. And so when I was in college at Aquinas College, I had no idea what I was going to be when I grew up. Still trying to figure that out, but I think I'm getting a little bit better at it. But it was a conversation with a couple of my professors that when I sort of said, hey, I'm sort of approaching the tail end of my sophomore year, and they just said, well, what do you enjoy doing? And I said, I enjoy volunteering. And they said, well, do you mind fundraising? I said, no, I've been selling candy bars and magazines for the schools. I'm fine with that. And so they said, well, that could be a career. And so I started to explore that. I had a couple of internships and really found, my place through service in the nonprofit field. And feel blessed to have been able to mirror sort of my skill set with passions.
That's awesome. I mean, the nonprofit world, having sat on a number of different boards currently who are nonprofits, it is in obviously working with the staff of those nonprofits, but in particular CEOs or executive directors. You have to have that passion, right? I mean, you have to have that fire. Because, I mean, let's face it, you're not making millions of dollars, but you're serving a different purpose, right? I mean, has that been your experience?
Well, and it really ties into our role with Rotary, too, right? I mean, it's the whole service before self sort of mindset, and just the idea of, how can you lift up others so that they, too, can have an opportunity to be successful, an opportunity to build their own wealth. And, and how do we, help our children, our grandchildren, our neighbors' children, our community to be best positioned, to thrive.
That's awesome. So, obviously, you kind of hung around the West Michigan area, super ties to Muskegon County. Chris McWigan, the former Community Foundation president, retires. and just describe to us that process as to why you decided, you know what, this is the next step for me.
Yeah, it was really pretty interesting. It was at a time in our life when our youngest daughter, we've got 3 children, my wife Tammy and I do, and our youngest daughter was approaching her senior year up at Fremont Public Schools. And we started to sort of say, where do we want to end up when we retire? And Tammy is from Whitehall, and as I shared, I was from Muskegon here, and so we said we want to get back to Muskegon. And so we're just sort of exploring that. And then about 6 months later, Chris announces her retirement. And at the time, I was working at the community foundation that serves Muskegon County.
Okay.
And I said, well, this could get very interesting very soon, very quickly.
Right.
Because my experience with the community foundation in Muskegon goes back to when I was in high school. My first exposure is I actually received a scholarship from the community foundation, interviewed with Pat Johnson in what was the Hackley Administration Building back in the day.
Wow.
And that scholarship played a pivotal role in my ability to pursue school and to go to Aquinas College. And so I've always remembered that and wanted to, that's part of the giving back that I have within me. When my mother passed away unexpectedly and unplanned about 30 years ago, I reached out to Pat and we created a fund at a foundation to honor my mother and her legacy.
Wow.
And so the timing of Chris's announcement just seemed like this is meant to be. It's sort of coming back around and coming home. And so I did. I expressed my interest and have felt very blessed to succeed 2 wonderful leaders in Pat and Chris, and to have the opportunity to lead just a wonderful organization and a great group of people.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's a pretty incredible story. When you talk about coming full circle,
right?
That is fantastic. Well, I mean, that had to have been a very exciting and proud moment for you when they said, "Yeah, you know what, Todd, we'd like you to now lead our organization."
Yeah, absolutely, and one whose values and its purpose specifically aligns, with who I am and what I feel is important.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, well, let's talk about the Community Foundation.
Sure.
For those folks who might be listening to this or watching this and don't really understand what the Community Foundation is, can you describe that for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Community Foundation for Muskegon County was founded in 1961. And really what it is it's an organization that's in some ways very complex and in some ways is very simple. A lot of times folks will think about charities as an organization that does something specific. A community foundation technically can work in any area, whether it's arts, human services, environment. It's just a matter of where it is deemed to be sort of the most pressing needs within the community, and that's sort of where it finds itself. But going back to 1961, folks give money to the community foundation. That money is permanently invested. So the idea is that we're creating a long-term resource within the community. Then we use a portion of that earnings every year to allocate in the forms of scholarships and grants within the community. And so we're fortunate that since 1961, there have been folks who have given everywhere from $5 to very generous 7-figure gifts. And then how they articulate they want those funds to enrich the community is how they're allocated. So we'll allocate anywhere from $11 to $13 million a year here in Muskegon County. And, and so as a matter of example, if somebody gave us some funds and said, you know what, I'd like it to benefit education, the earnings from those funds would benefit something that is educationally oriented. If it was something that's or an individual can come to us and say, you know what, we'd like the funds to benefit XYZ charity. We'd like it to benefit the Boys and Girls Club. The money, those earnings would benefit the Boys and Girls Club. They may give us the funds and say, we'd like the board at the board's discretion to use it for the most pressing needs. So however those funds are donated drives how they can be reallocated within the community.
So donors really, ultimately, when they are donating to the Community Foundation, they have the ability to control that, or say, you know what, I just want to give this gift and let the board decide how those funds are going to be allocated.
Exactly. We have some individuals that will create a fund during their lifetime, and they'll say, we'd like to be involved in that decision making.
Okay.
And so they may make recommendations, several times a year in terms of those funds. As long as those funds are addressing a charitable purpose, those funds are allocated here within Muskegon County. And then when they pass away, they may say, okay, now we're going to narrow it down a little bit and have it, be for, education, community and economic development, something like that.
That's fantastic. So I want to ask you two questions, one about your staff and then one about your board. Let's start with the staff.
Sure.
Obviously, you're not a organization of one. It takes a staff to do a lot of these things. Talk about your staff. What various roles and responsibilities does your staff play in all this? Sure.
Well, and I think the other piece that maybe I should even lift up before I talk about the community foundation side of the staffing is we're unique in that the Frauenthal Center is part of the community foundation. And so the community foundation, when the Frauenthal Center, then the Michigan Theater, was at risk of being literally knocked over with the wrecking ball, donors in the community and the community foundation said we can't allow for that resource to be lost, that historic resource. And so we actually have an entire staff of individuals that are committed to running the Frauenthal.
Okay.
And so if folks they may have used the Hilt building in the reception hall there, and there may be a wedding or a class reunion. The Beardsley Theater, the Muskegon Civic Theater, does many of their performances. The Symphony does many of their performances in the Frauenthal. And so it really takes a lot of partnering within the community. And so we have an entire Frauenthal team, roughly 8 or 9 full-time individuals, and then a variety of people that are sort of event staff that, depending on the number of shows, varies. And we could never do it without our volunteers front of the Frauenthal as well. And so they are a critical part to what we do and part of our commitment to downtown Muskegon. From a community foundation standpoint, we've got folks led by Heidi Seitzema that are part of our donor development team, and so they'll work with donors directly and help them explore what they may be interested in supporting, help individuals think through, do they want to do this during their lifetime, or is this something that they'd like to set up to have happen through their estate? Mm-hmm. And then in leaving a gift to the community foundation and their estate plans, create that legacy. We have individuals like Janelle Mayer, who leads our grant making and our community investment side of things, and she works closely with Amy Moore, who does some of our community nonprofit capacity work in our community engagement work. And those individuals are external to the organization as well as many of their other teammates. And so they're working around scholarships or helping to facilitate conversations around affordable child care, around housing. How do we bring both economic and educational balance back to Muskegon Heights, help facilitate those kinds of things. And then we have our administrative leadership in Israel Velez and Jennifer Stryker, who really, help keep everything else moving. But in total, we're a staff of about 35. Well, I'm sorry, that includes the variable staff. We're full-time, we're about 26 FTE. We do have 2 staff that are up in Mason County because Mason County actually has a community foundation that is part of the Muskegon County Community Foundation, but their donors want those funds to enrich Mason County, so there are 2 staff that are dedicated to that work as well.
It's really fascinating, the number of staff, and I had forgotten about the Frauenthal connection, which is fantastic. I'm so grateful as an outsider coming in, because I was not born and raised here, but as an outsider coming in, having that asset and having been to that theater on multiple occasions. I mean, it is just a centerpiece for the history of this town. It's fantastic.
Thank you. We're very proud of it. Back in 2020, when we were coming out of the throes of the initial pandemic, Amy Heiser and Aslan Scott led a group of individuals to help us with some important preservation that needed to take place with the Frauenthal. And so now, when folks come to the Frauenthal, you have new theatrical lighting. You've got a new sound system. There's been some renovations to some of the elements, and internally the less sexy HVAC system has been replaced, but you sit more comfortably.
Yes, especially on days like today where it's super hot.
Exactly, and then there were some things just infrastructurally that needed to be addressed, and so what we see is not only a wonderful resource, but the community embraces it and recognizes it as this safe place for folks to convene culturally, but also just to have trusted community conversations.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a fantastic asset. The other, before we get to the board, the other aspect I'd like your comments on, because it's probably something that folks maybe don't recognize, but I know because I was personal, and not my son was personally involved in it. But Community Foundation also provides leadership for youth.
Yes.
Could you describe that, please?
Yes, we've got a youth advisory committee, and so it's going back about 25 years now. About 25 years ago, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation wanted to help promote and lift up youth philanthropy across the state of Michigan. And so what they did is they offered a challenge grant across the state. And so if you raised unrestricted or field of interest funds earmarked toward youth, they would match those dollars. And part of that requirement was the creation of youth advisory committees, which consist of students from the area high schools as well as homeschooled students. And so largely during the school year, they still get summers off. These students come together. They participate in community needs assessments. They have their own grant round. And so locally, our youth have said mental health services and youth self-esteem are things that are lifted up quite heavily. And so they'll open up their grant round. Folks can apply for grants. They review the grants under consideration. And then they award grants from the funds that they have available. And so they allocate nearly $50,000 a year. And then they're involved in sort of that decision making. How do you decide when you have limited dollars where you make, the most catalytic investment? And so that's very sort of insightful. It gives them an understanding or a dimension of service that is unique to the Youth Advisory Committee. They've been involved in fundraising in terms of growing their endowment. Every year they sort of take up different charges. And so that's a possibility. They volunteer in the community. But it's really about learning what good citizenship is. And again, ties in with the values of the Rotary Act, from the Rotary, but just provides a deeper level of when community philanthropy comes together and it creates a resource, how can we begin to responsibly allocate it to lift up others? And so it's a great opportunity.
No, it is. I think it's an aspect that, unless you have a child or aware of it, that you wouldn't be aware of. And I applaud the foundation for creating that, because it does. It's a leadership, but it also, you have to work well with others, right? I mean, because again, you're limited amount of money, and you've got to allocate it. You got to decide where that money's going to go, and that's a great process for young people to learn, especially people that are coming from different segments of our community. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's, an important piece there. You sort of learn the tough part, that because of finite resources, there are good things that don't always get funded as well, which is, a difficult realization, both as a young person but also as an adult, whether it's a home or, or philanthropically. And, and so throughout the state, almost every community has access. Well, every community has access to the Community Foundation instrument. And nearly all of the community foundations in the state of Michigan have some form of a youth advisory committee. And Pat Johnson, who we all remember, was really pivotal at the statewide level in terms of helping to make sure that it not just happened in Muskegon. And so when this whole idea that the Kellogg Foundation was exploring this possibility, Pat was one of the individuals that was sort of saying, we need to do this on a larger scale.
Yeah.
And so because of Pat's leadership and Chris's, Muskegon has been a leader in terms of statewide philanthropy and some of creating that mindset too.
That's awesome. So let's talk about, obviously, Community Foundation is served by a board of directors.
Yes.
And could you, describe sort of the makeup of the board and what their function and role is?
Sure. We work very hard to ensure that our board is representative of our community. And so our board currently numbers 17 members. We work to ensure that we have individuals from throughout the community. And so we have folks from the northern part of the county, the eastern side, as well as the south, not just downtown Muskegon. But we also have downtown Muskegon represented.
Of course.
We make sure that we've got a good blend of male to female. And so what we really try to do is make sure that we're meeting our countywide demographics. And so our board composition is 51-49 male to, female to male right now. We make sure that it reflects our community both, from a cultural standpoint. And so actually our board is closer to twice the diversity that we have within our county. And that's intentional in that we want to make sure that we have an understanding of those whom we're also trying to impact and lift up within the community. Because as we know and through our work, that there are folks and individuals within our community that have not been as economically is blessed, and that could be folks that are living rurally in Muskegon County or folks that are living in some of our inner cities. We also, in the last few years, have been working with greater intention to make sure that we've got a broader age demographic amongst our board. But we've got a very diverse board. Priscilla Wilcox is currently our board chair. Ed Gardner is our vice chair of our board. And we've been blessed over the years to have, just some wonderful community leaders that have led the organization from the board perspective. It was interesting when I came to the Community Foundation in 2019, returned to Muskegon. We undertook a strategic planning process, DJ, and in that process, we'd taken some things that were referred to as leadership goals when Chris was here and lifted them up and said, no, these really need to be values for the institution. And those were, are we doing things that build hope and opportunity, especially for youth within the community? Are we doing things that are collaborative? Because we wanted to make sure that we weren't doing things alone or that our partners weren't doing things in isolation. Are we working toward common and shared community goals? And then the third piece, are we being inclusive? And so that needs to begin right at our board level. And it needs to be front and center with everything that we do. And so when we're working within the community and taking on projects, we ask, how does that align with our values? Doesn't mean that if things don't directly align on all three of those points, that they aren't wonderful things that may bring wonderful, may contribute to improving the quality of life here. But it does tell us whether or not it is as strong of an alignment that we would be looking for, and so I think that's just a very important piece, because when we're trying to tackle issues around education, around community and economic development, around building a community of trust where all voices are valued and everybody is being lifted up through DEI-related work, it's important that people are being heard, that they're valued, and that there's this shared community spirit.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. So, I got another series. I mean, it's as you're talking, I'm just thinking about all the questions that I have for you. But I think some of the important ones for folks that are out there listening that are like, man, I really would like to give to the foundation because I really appreciate their mission. How do they get in contact, or who do they contact, and what do they have to do in order to do that?
Sure. I mean, the easy way is folks can give me a call.
Okay.
They can certainly reach out and call Heidi and the development team. They're thinking they'd like to write a check or do a gift online. You can certainly go to the Community Foundation's website is muskegonfoundation.org.
Okay.
And you can do that. We'd be interested in sort of exploring how folks may be interested in impacting Muskegon County in a greater way, both during their lifetime as well as, through their estate plans. I think sometimes when we talk about estate plans or wills and trusts, people are like, oh man, it takes rich people to do that. No, folks would be surprised that when you look at what we have accumulated, through home ownership or through retirement, that, that there are resources. And so we don't want to disinherit children.
Right.
Or the church or somebody's alma mater, but we do want to say, is there room within individuals' giving, or they want to create a legacy that'll continue to help Muskegon County? And so it may be as simple as sort of saying what things are of importance to you today. And so I know that you've been heavily involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and so it may say, well, would you be interested in helping to perpetuate your annual gift to the Boys and Girls Club, through an estate gift? And so by doing that, it's just a matter of math then, and so it's like if you make a gift of $100 a year, we'd say, well, if you make multiply that times 25, and we say if you make a gift of $2,500 to an endowment, 25, then it's going to perpetuate that forever. If you want to create a fund that will, in my mother's case, she was very interested in supporting youth and things around literacy, as well as sort of the faith-based upbringing that she provided for me and my brothers. And so we created a fund that supports early childhood education that has a faith component to it. And so that's how those funds are used. But it's really up to the individual. We just would love to have the conversation. If they love to gift to something that we're doing, if they're wondering what we're exploring, we'd be more than glad. Then it might be Janelle that we're talking to, or Amy. We've been really leaning in around education, and have worked closely with Randy at the ISD and the local schools to help ensure that there are literacy coaches available for the elementary school teachers in our county, so that we can help, so that resource can help with reading and literacy for our young learners. We've worked with United Way and the Y and Goodwill around creating affordable childcare. We've supported the Muskegon Area Mission. With their recent expansion, they've got a great childcare component. And what's really being lifted up now is we know that we have this drought of housing.
Yeah.
And so in partnership with several municipalities and Greater Muskegon Economic Development and the Chamber and, again, Goodwill and United Way, we conducted a countywide housing assessment. We learned that in the next 5 years we're going to need 9,000 housing units. And so right now we're looking to identify strategies where the Community Foundation may be able to help catalyze housing developments across the entire housing continuum. So this is housing for folks that may be underhoused, but it is also, how do we help create housing for, for our teachers, for our first responders. Because currently the market is pricing those individuals out.
Right.
And so by addressing the entire housing continuum, we're hoping that we can do that. And so we're looking to take a strategy to our board in October. So maybe I come back and revisit you when that's something that we can be shared.
Yeah.
But really looking to sort of say, how can we use our grant dollars to encourage investment? But also at the Community Foundation, we'll use some of our corpus, or those funds that have been donated. They're invested responsibly, but there is a portion of it that is meant to be fixed income. And so that may typically be bonds, cash, things of that sort, but the instruments that you typically don't lose your resource in, but they're far, far more conservative. Well, we can use a portion of that to reinvest in our community. And so similarly to the work that we did with Fresh Coast and the Exit program, we were able to loan some money to Fresh Coast so that they could acquire the building so that they could continue to offer the Exit program. And so when we can use that corpus to do things like that, we want to sort of explore those opportunities as well. And so, but as we know, philanthropy is finite, and so if there are individuals that are interested in participating in that, I'd say please give us a call. We'd love to walk alongside. One of the things that DJ, is we do nothing by ourselves. I talked about collaboration. Mm-hmm. It's collaboration with donors. It's collaboration with our nonprofit partners. It's with local municipalities, educators. And it is that synergy that we get by working collectively where we think that we can make the greatest inroads.
That's well, I mean, I know that you know this, and I've expressed it many times, but there seems to be in Muskegon County this driving collaborative spirit that I don't know that other communities have. I mean, I've experienced it in many different facets, and then just from listening to you talk today, obviously that is a big driving force as to why our community foundation is so successful. I
agree with you, and I think Muskegon is very special. It's almost a vulnerability-based trust, It's just like we know, empirically that we need to trust one another to achieve some of the change that needs to come about. And it's refreshing, but it does make the hard work easier.
Very true, very true, very true. So on the flip side of the donors, if there are organizations or individuals out there looking to, start whatever, or they're part of nonprofits and they've got these programs and they're not exactly sure how they're going to fund it, how do they get a hold of, or who do they talk to at the community foundation, at least to have that conversation?
Sure. Well, a couple of things. From a donor standpoint, if they want to create a fund that will perpetually help and serve a local nonprofit, we can help them.
Okay.
And again, that would be the development team led by Heidi.
Yep.
From a grant standpoint, we're actually in a strategic grant round right now. And so folks can go to our website and they can look at how to apply if there are individuals that learn that way. Or they can reach out to Janelle and individuals on Janelle's team. And so we've got Deanna Giles, Martha Smith. She just remarried, so I had to think. Amy Moore. Those individuals would be able to answer questions around how to apply. But just call and say, I'm interested. You call the Community Foundation's general number, 722-4538, and you say, can I talk to somebody about a grant? And they'll put you in touch with somebody that's available and could talk you through that and explore those grants.
Yeah, so ultimately, I think the idea here is not to get discouraged or think that you have to be this conglomerate or this huge nonprofit in order to explore the possibility of the community foundation helping to fund whatever project it is that you're looking to start.
Exactly. Well, and in fact, we also have, for smaller grants, open grant rounds. And so we work with our faith partners or neighborhood associations, and they're referred to as community empowerment grants or community engagement grants. And so if there's something for a couple of $1,000s that you're trying to do, whether it's, if a church perhaps is looking to do an after-school reading program for the kids that attend the school in the neighborhood, but they need some upstart dollars, they could reach out to us, and it may be a perfect alignment for some of these faith partner and community engagement dollars. And so, you don't have to be, the biggest organization in town. You need to have a passion for lifting up the community, and even if there are individuals that have ideas, if they're not part of a not-for-profit, we may be able to sort of say, what, if they reach out, we can say, this nonprofit is doing this work. Have you thought about reaching out? You're interested in literacy. Have you met Melissa at Reed Muskegon? Right. And then maybe there's opportunity through that, And so we also see ourselves as being connectors. I often say that our sort of community leadership role is the most important role that we can play, because I don't philosophically believe that we'll grant ourselves out of any of the societal ills that have been created. And so it is going to take people coming together to discuss, how do we work in a collective, collaborative way to lift individuals up. And that doesn't necessarily take just financial resources, right? It takes determination, persistence, consistency, and so we need individuals to reach out for those kinds of things.
Fantastic. Well, I know that one, obviously in front of us, the Community Foundation always puts out an annual report.
Yes.
Which obviously you can get a hard copy of, or I'm assuming it's on the website as well.
It is.
So you can see every year how those dollars are being spent, where they're being spent, and the missions behind that, I'm assuming.
Yes, absolutely.
You've got an event coming up, though.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, so every fall we've got our annual gathering. It is a free public event that's held inside the Frauenthal Theater. This year it's being held on Friday, October 11th. We're actually going to hold it a little bit earlier in the day because it's on a Friday. We don't want to compete with Football Friday, right?
Right.
We know how that can turn out. And so it's actually going to begin, the doors will open at 3 o'clock, and it'll be social, and there'll be snacks and free drink. There'll be a cash bar for those that are interested in starting their Friday a little early.
Yes.
But as I mentioned, housing is something that we're really lifting up. And so Charles Marone is coming to Muskegon. He's the founder of Strong Towns, and he's written multiple books and is really a renowned economist on sort of revitalizing housing in particular. And so he's talking about his most recent book is Bottoms Up, A Revolution to Rebuild American Prosperity. And so he's going to be coming here to talk about housing, what we can do locally to help the goal of home ownership for individuals. At this event, we will also be honoring our Impact Award recipient, which is given out annually to a champion within Muskegon County. And so this year we'll be honoring Dick and Lynn Camps. Yeah, just great people.
Good people.
Yeah, and they created the Startup Program. It's been going 10 years now, and for folks that don't know, that's a program that works with the individuals that are aging out of the foster care system and really provides a bit of a sort of border house model where they live. They have space of their own, but they have individuals that live there that provide support to them and really sort of help them transition from being a young adult into being able to live a successful individual life. And so it's really helping them. And so we'll have an opportunity to celebrate the work that Dick and Lynn and others do through the Step Up program. But I think the conversation too, that's related to housing.
Yep.
But the conversation that Charles will be lifting up will be a very important one for us as we approach the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, it's nice for these annual events that you're hitting the relevant topics. I mean, housing obviously is a huge issue for Muskegon County to tackle, which is good and bad. I mean, there's good to that and there's bad to that. But ultimately, certainly appreciate the Community Foundation's leadership in that effort, as well as the other efforts here throughout Muskegon County. I think again, it's an organization that sometimes people will forget about, not recognizing that that's there as a resource, and you should use that as a resource if you're looking to do some innovative or fun things or things that are part of the mission and drive here in Muskegon County.
Yeah, thank you, DJ. And I think the one thing that's great about philanthropy is there's an entrepreneurial kind of spirit within it, and you will try things, that you're comfortable trying things to see if that might be the catalyst to help, individuals thrive. And so I think we'll be creative around housing, and because I think it demands it. When you're looking at 9,000 units, we're going to have to look at things a little bit outside of the traditional housing models. And I'm just really pleased to say that last week the County Board of Commission also approved some funding that's being paired with Community Foundation funding and with GMED to create a countywide housing resource. And so there'll be an individual that'll be available to the municipalities. So when they say, well, how do we go about changing our zoning? and how do we begin to look at what housing may look like in our township or in our municipality. And we want to make sure we preserve our 10-acre parcels, but in this area, we're okay if there's a little bit more growth.
Yeah.
But how do we do that in a responsible way? And so I'm just very happy to see that partnership, and that folks are at the, from our smaller not-for-profits to the county and the Community Foundation and others coming together around these important issues.
Again, collaborative spirit, right?
Collaborative spirit.
Here it is, Muskegon County, again, leading the way in a lot of different ways. Well,
Absolutely.
Todd, thank you for being with us today and really exploring and giving people the opportunity to understand not only the value of what a community foundation is, but certainly what an asset it is here in Muskegon County. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, DJ. And sign up for October 11th. Come
That's
see
right.
us.
Don't forget October 11th, free
Yes.
event.
Yeah.
It's packed full of good stuff. And plus you get to hang out at the Fruenthal. I mean,
There you go.
Well, what better way to spend a Friday afternoon?
There you go. Building a strong community.
Building a strong community. Well, again, thank you, Todd. Thank you all for being a part and listening to this program. And again, this doesn't happen without the innovation and insight of one Mike Vogus. Thank you, Mike, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Mike.